All right, hi everybody, John Meadows here, and I got a really good response. The last video I did on how, can you get ripped naturally? So I wanted to do a video on how big can you get naturally? It's a really good question, and there's actually a lot of people that have studied this pretty seriously. So one of the questions I get is, can you get to pro level, IFBB Pro level naturally? The answer is absolutely not. I should say 99.9% chance, because I believe Ronnie Coleman turned pro naturally, and I believe Kai Green turned pro naturally. Now those guys later added probably 80 pounds of muscle, so I think they're probably telling the truth when they say they turned pro naturally. I believe them. That's two guys. You may have some little smaller guys, maybe a bantamweight or lightweight, maybe they've turned pro. But generally speaking, you're not going to turn pro natural. It's just the nature of the beast. I think it's misleading when these guys say that you can do it naturally. That's misleading because it's just not the real world. It's just not the world we live in. I train people on both sides of the spectrum. Some people are enhanced, some people aren't. But either way, I like to be honest with them and real. So if somebody natural comes to me and says, can I be on the Mr. Olympia stage in bodybuilding? I'm going to say, probably not naturally. That's just the way it is. So now having said that, how big can you get naturally? So one of the things that are out there are all these equations that you can plug in your numbers and it'll tell you how big you can expect to get. So I want to do a couple things. I want to share some of those equations with you. I want to talk about how quickly you can reach your genetic potential. And then I want to just talk about some other factors. And I think this will kind of give you a better idea of what you can realistically hope to achieve. Now, before I say anything, the principle of individuality always rules. Everybody's a little different. So to say that you're going to have these black and white rules and that those affect everybody would be very misleading. So but I do want to give you some just kind of general things that you can go by. Now, so one of the equations that are out there in terms of how big can you get naturally is an equation from Martin Berkham, the intermittent fasting guy. And basically what he says is he takes your height in centimeters. And for me, that's 172 centimeters. And he subtracts 100 from it. And that leaves you with kilograms in shape. So from Martin's equation, me at 172 centimeters tall minus 100 leaves me at 72 kilograms in shape, contest ready, bodybuilder style. So that puts me at 158 pounds. If you're 5'8", 160 pounds. If you're 5'10", 171 pounds. If you're 6 foot tall, 182 pounds. Now, I can tell you that when I was very sick in 2005 and I was in the hospital and I wasn't being fed, I was only being fed intravenously. When I was literally a bag of bones, I was 165 pounds. So this probably doesn't apply to me. But anyways, so this is where Martin thinks you would be in terms of contest condition. And I think that's important to say. Now, there is another guy, his name is Casey Butt. Now, Casey, this guy's a PhD in engineering. He's a math guy, he's a physics guy. And this guy put a ton of work into trying to figure out, and not only what your maximum weight would be, natural, your potential, he's got formulas that break it down by body part. How big can your arms get? How big can your chest get? Everything. And I'm going to put a little picture up so you can see all these formulas. And I didn't want to try to explain them all because, number one, I'm not an engineer and I probably couldn't do Casey justice, but this gentleman put a lot of work in. He did a fantastic job. And one of the things that he does that I like is that he takes into account your ankle and wrist size. Now, for me, I think that your bones actually play a big role in how big you can get. Some people have a bigger bone structure, and it's been postulated that every pound of bone can hold 5 pounds of muscle. Now, I don't know that that's true or not. I've read that from the Sports Gene book. But I would say the bigger your bones, the more muscle you can carry. So somebody who has small wrists and small ankles may not be able to carry as much muscle. So I like the fact that Casey included that in his calculations. So again, I'm going to show you a picture of some of these crazy calculations, but I took his basic formula, and it's inches, and then it asks you for your ankle and wrist size at the smallest points, and he plugs it all into this calculator. And at 68 inches, my ankle is 8.75 inches, and my wrist is 7. I don't know if that's big or small. I think it's probably pretty small. But according to Casey's formula, I could be 5% body fat and contest ready, and I would be 179 pounds. And then at 10% natural, I could expect to be around 189 pounds. So his estimate gives you a little, in my case, it gave me a lot more weight, what I would be natural in terms of my genetic limitation. So Casey would say in my bone structure and my height, I could expect to compete around 179 pounds natural. And I think that's pretty good because when I won my first natural show, I was actually in the low 180s. So I was actually right in that ballpark. I was just a little bit above it. And again, I'm a little bit of a genetic outlier. So, you know, back in those days in the low 180s, it would seem to match Casey's formula. Now, again, I'm just one person, but I think that's pretty cool. So kudos to Casey. You're going to want to look up this formula and plug it in yourself. And actually, I think it'd be pretty cool. Plug it in, see what you think. Tell me if it's good or bad in your comments below. This could actually be pretty fun. Now, there's another guy, Eric Helms. Eric is actually a friend of mine. And he studied a lot of data that was mixed. He took a group of, or he looked over the research for people who were enhanced, people who were natural. And he kind of put together this formula, and you can input your data or not, and it tells you how big you can get naturally, or I guess if you wanted to try to figure out if someone's not natural, you could plug in the formula. And it's really cool too. So I'm gonna put a little screenshot of that and show you what it looks like. But it matched up pretty well with Casey's formula. So I put in, anyways, so I'm gonna show you right now. All right, so this is pretty cool. This is Eric Helms here. This is his formula. And here's this fat-free mass index. Now, if you look down below, you're going to get a number, and like he'll tell you if you're below average, or down here at the bottom is highly unlikely you're natural. So you can probably get up to where you're at somewhere around a 23 or a 27 will be your max. So I thought I would have some fun here. I am 68 inches in height right now. I'm actually probably 225 in my body fat. I'm just going to say it's 10. I don't know if it's 10 or not, but so I'm going to hit calculate, and it's going to give me a 30.9. So if you go down here at the bottom, 28 to 30, it's highly unlikely you can do that naturally. Now, Eric is correct because I do use HRT, and obviously I competed as an IFBB Pro. But let's go backwards in time, and let's say back when I competed and I won my first show natural when I was 185, and I was probably 6% body fat back then. And I'll hit calculate, and now I'm 26.5. So if you go down here, 26 to 27 scores considered suspicious, but still attainable naturally. So it's possible, and I can tell you that it is possible for sure because I was. So then, let's say the Arnold Classic when I did it, when I weighed in at 212, I was a legit 4% body fat. Calculate 31.0. So according to Eric, there's zero possibility I was natural for the Arnold Classic, and he was correct. So, and then here's some of Casey's formulas as well that you'll see. But this is pretty cool. It's on fastfoodmacros.com. But these calculators are pretty cool. But that's it. That's what I wanted to show you here. All right, so that was interesting. According to Eric's formula, nice work, Eric. Eric always does a great job. I've got a ton of respect for him. So now, what can you? So these formulas are interesting to see how big you can get naturally. How long does it really how long does it really take before you know you're at your genetic potential? So there's a lot of people out there that have studied that as well. One of them, this LM, is Lyle McDonald. Not the best personality in the world, but certainly nobody can dispute his intelligence. Very smart guy. And this AA is Alan Aragon. And Lyle and Alan are actually pretty close in their estimates. And what they're saying is the first year somebody trains, Lyle is saying they can gain about 2 pounds of muscle a month. And then the second year they train, about 1 pound of muscle a month. So that's 36 pounds in 2 years. And Alan's, if you look at it, and if you take the averages of his ranges, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty close. And then both of these two would also say that in years 3 and 4, maybe you can gain 5 to 10 pounds, maybe. So both of them are saying you could probably gain 40 pounds of muscle. I think there's a lot of caveats there though. Number one, based on my experience in training hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of natural people, you better have awesome training and awesome nutrition if you think you're going to gain 40 pounds in 4 years. That is not easy to do. If someone's just going into the gym, they're just training to be training, I wouldn't expect them to even come close. So I think, I don't dispute what Lyle and Alan are saying. What I would say is that when they made this expectation, it was also that the training is optimized, the diet's optimized, everything is set up really well. And I would agree with that. You will never see these numbers unless you optimize everything. And a lot of guys out there, they don't optimize everything and then they just complain when they don't grow and they just blame it on drugs. Well, I'm not on drugs. The only reason you're bigger than me is because of drugs. But the truth is they just don't put in the work, and they just don't put in the work nutritionally. So that's quite a bit of muscle you can gain naturally. So at the end of, say, 4 years of training really hard and eating really well, you've got a pretty good idea of where you're at genetically, what your genetics limits are. Now, the other thing is, if you've been training 10 years and you haven't gained any muscle, that doesn't mean you can't get year one gains if your training and nutrition was terrible. So I don't want you to think that if you've been training a long time, you know, your ship has sailed and you're not going to get very big. Again, I think you can get some newbie gains if you just optimize your nutrition, your training. If you take them to the next level, then those gains will kick in. I will say this though, if you've optimized that stuff and you've been training your butt off, eating your butt off, and you're 10 years in or whatever, it's probably going to be hard for you to gain a substantial amount of muscle. Now, some other things to think about. I mentioned, I'm going to put my little board down here. I mentioned bones. I do believe that the bone size you have is a big, big factor in how much muscle you can carry. For me, for example, I got a big, wide pelvic girdle. So, I mean, I can actually handle quite a bit of muscle, probably more than the average guy. And then a lot of guys have big, wide clavicles, big, wide shoulders. That's not me, but some guys have that genetic advantage and they can hold a lot more muscle. The other thing you got to figure out is genetically, just your genetics. Some people train hard and they just don't progress as fast as others. It's just the way it is. There's no way around it. And look, I love it when people say, forget genetics, I'm just going to go all out. I agree with that 100%. But you also have to be realistic. If your genetics are only going to get you to, you know, if your family has been 5'6" and 140 pounds, all of them, you're probably not going to be 5'6" and 220. Now, I know there's always exceptions again, but you just can't ignore genetics. You just can't ignore it. And then I think there's a mental component to this too. I talked about optimizing your training. Well, to me, optimizing your training means that you're training as hard as you can and recover from it. So if you can't push yourself that hard, if you feel a little pain and you stop your sets, if you just can't handle the stress mentally and you have to back off all the time, you're probably not going to reach your genetic potential. That's what I always felt like was one of my genetic advantages. I have a really high pain threshold and I can work through pain. And then the other half of that was recovery. Some people just genetically can recover better from others. You probably have friends that some of them will train and then the next day they're not sore, and then the other ones will train, even though their diet's good, everything's good, they're sore for a week. That is influenceable certainly by your sleep, your diet, and all those things, but some people just don't recover as well as others. And the people that can recover the best, in my experience, I've trained a lot of natural guys like this, they can train more often and they just grow better. So, and then, you know, there's other factors too. Our environment, you know, some of that's completely out of your control, and there's different impacts that can be made hormonally just on everything from plastics to air quality and things like that. I don't really want to waste your time with that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is consistency. So there is no way you will ever come close to reaching your genetic potential as a natural without consistency. The guys who are on gear can get away with some of that stuff, but you cannot. As a natural, you cannot be, well, I'm going to take a few days off here and then train for a couple days hard, and well, I'm going to take another week off. You have to be consistent. There's no way around it. So I guess in summary, I hope this was a little helpful. It looks like, and the other thing is, I think where I ended up was somewhere around 30 to 40 pounds of muscle you can gain. You got to kind of scale that to based on all these factors. Like let's say your height. It's going to be a lot easier for someone that's 210 to get to 240 versus someone who's 140 maybe to get to 170. So I would kind of scale those numbers down. If you're shorter, you can maybe even scale them up. If you're taller, if you have the bones, it'll accommodate the extra muscle. We're looking at probably 4 years of optimized training before you can say, I might be pretty close to my genetic potential. So around 4 years of perfect training, perfect dieting before you really know. So don't train for 1 year and then just give up and say, I've hit my limit. And try these calculators. Let me know what you think. All right, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed that video. If there's any other topics, this natural topic is always interesting to me. So if there's any other kind of natural topics that you'd like to hear, let me know, whether it's, I don't know, can you get wide shoulders? Can you get a quad sweep? Whatever. Just let me know, comment below, go through some of these equations and let me know how it turned out for you. I'd be interesting to see if you all are exceeding the numbers. And by the way, these numbers, I should have mentioned this, these really pertain more to males. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed it and we'll see you next time.